people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. It would seem that Australia's own Taylor Robertson has signed to Red Owl Boxing. And not only that, unbeaten up-and-comer Virginia Fuchs has done the same thing, joining their ranks. What is Red Owl Boxing? It's a small Texas-based promotional outfit that does shows locally. What I think is the ideal scenario for both Taylor Robertson and Virginia Fuchs, because right now what the both of them need more than anything is activity, are fights. They can't wait around for an MVP or a matchroom or somebody else to swoop in and offer them a multi-fight deal. While both of those major outfits promote several female fighters, they can't promote all of them. There are still some fighters that fall through the cracks. Enter a smaller promotional outfit like a Red Owl Boxing that, if nothing else, can get them some stay busy fights in the interim while they wait for something bigger to come along. Taylor Robertson of Australia sports a professional record of 9 wins with 2 losses and 1 draw, 2 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 12 professional bouts. Last in action in March of this year opposite the ring, Fabiola Marquez, who won a majority decision against her in what was an 8-rounder. So Taylor Robertson is currently coming off a loss. Taylor Robertson, who's been around, she's fought in her native Australia. She's been linked to several smaller promotional outfits over the years. This is just the latest. 27 years old, still relatively young, with many more good years to give to the sport of boxing, and those 2 career blemishes, that's hardly the end of the world. That can be worked around. I think Taylor's biggest problem is that she's a good fighter campaigning at weights where there are a lot of other good fighters, a lot of other solid girls. She's campaigned anywhere in between flyweight to bantamweight, and these are very, very deep divisions where it's difficult to stand out. It's hard. I believe that she's currently based out of the United States, Florida more specifically, so far from home, sharpening her tools and trying to learn abroad, getting out of her comfort zone, though as stated, campaigning in divisions as deep as flyweight, superfly, bantam. It's difficult for anybody, for everybody, to stand out. And that's what I think the nature of Taylor Robertson's problem has been. It's hard enough for a woman boxer to make a name for herself, let alone one that has 2 career blemishes. Now, hopefully, Red Owl can help to get Taylor Robertson back in the winner's bracket and back on track over to Virginia Fuchs. Unbeaten up-and-comer sporting a professional record of 4 wins with no losses and no draws, 1 recorded knockout. Last in action all the way back there in August of last year when she faced the then unbeaten Adelaida Ruiz for what was a WBC interim super flyweight title, a title that I believe Virginia still holds. And with Virginia, it's a bit different because Virginia doesn't have any career blemishes like Taylor Robertson. She's unbeaten. She comes from a decorated amateur background, nicknamed the captain of the U.S. boxing team. The problem with Virginia, I'd say, is her age. Not to be an ageist or promote ageism, but I think if somebody hasn't picked her up, it's because of her age. It's because she's already 37 years old and she's not fully developed as a fighter. You don't have a whole lot of time with this one to groom her and develop her, not just into a solid fighter, but a marquee attraction at close to 40. That might be why a matchroom, an MVP, a top rank didn't pick her up already. They picked up her good buddy, Michaela Mayer, and Michaela's been with them ever since 2017. But I used to wonder all the way back then, why didn't they pick up Virginia? And as the years rolled by, the situation becomes a lot more precarious. You often hear it said that boxing is a young man's game, a young woman's. So she's with Red Owl Boxing now, and as stated, if nothing else, maybe they can get her some stay busy fights, some fights in the interim, so she can finally get her crack at the apple at that full WBC title and get something going. It's not too late. If she can fight for the title and win it inside of 2 to 3 fights, she might be able to give an MVP a reason to pick her up, a reason to sign her. But right now, with 37, without an alphabet title,
it just is what it is. I wish her all the best at Red Owl now that she's with them. Hopefully they can get her a fight in what remains of this year or early next year.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, veteran boxing scribe Stephen Kimothy did a write-up on this past weekend's action,
Dazed and Confused, DAZN and Confused,
highlighting their inexplicable decision to bill Wardley versus Parker as a pay-per-view to an American audience that likely didn't buy the pay-per-view. Hall of Fame promoter Lou Dembella said he's confused for good reason. DAZN Group and DAZN Boxing, if you disagree, could you please expound and inform? Any help, Turkey LL Sheikh? Boxing scribe Stephen Mulhausen, who writes and works for DAZN, reacted to Lou's comment by saying, "I'll put it this way, more people watched the fight on DAZN than this article."
So in a nutshell, instead of addressing the criticism that the pay-per-view is receiving, Stephen instead chose to take a shot at Steve Kim for even writing the article.
Lou DiBella responded by saying, "Do you really believe there was more than a tiny blip of viewership in America? You really think a meaningful number of people on the North American continent paid for it? You really think it should have been an upcharge from a subscription? With enough retweeting, more people will read Kim's article." Steve Kim himself chimed in, asking Stephen Mulhausen, "As an employee of DAZN, can you provide a pay-per-view number in America for that card?" You know that he won't, Steve.
I think it's untenable, indefensible, the decision to bill Wardley versus Clark as a pay-per-view to Americans on top of a subscription fee.
And these blasé attitudes towards the market that is intended to purchase these pay-per-views are not conducive towards anything. It was more of the same from Old Fish Eyes himself, Frank Warren.
A lot's been made of this fight being labelled a pay-per-view headliner, especially like people have mentioned like the quality of the undercard, etc. What is your response to people questioning whether this fight is pay-per-view or not?
Well, if you don't want to watch it, you won't buy it, will you?
And do you think that this is a fight that maybe DAZN should look to do on their normal pay-per-view subscription, or is this a fight to make for?
Question. It's a pay-per-view fight. If you don't want to buy it, don't buy it. Next question.
Well, guess what, Frank? In all likelihood, people didn't buy it. Not just in the United States, in the United Kingdom. And if that happens enough times,
For enough fights, on enough cards, what happens after that is what happened to the PBC on Fox, the PBC on Showtime. When they inundated the market with pay-per-views that underperformed, they got the axe.
the pursuit of maybe money, maybe if the pay-per-view does this, maybe it will have an upside, comes at a great expense that a lot of the boxing people don't want to acknowledge. Sports are not intended to be a luxury item. It is the common man, after all, that most consumes them, and you can't make it too difficult or too expensive for the common man in this economy to watch some boxing, so that when you tuck away fights like Itelma versus White, or Wardley versus Parker behind a paywall...
Well, if you don't want to watch it, you won't buy it, will you?
How many more times do you think you can get away with that before it catches up? Before it has an adverse effect on your promotion, your shows, and this sport? We're already seeing it in America. All the major networks are gone.
The network money along with it. That didn't happen on its own, and that didn't happen by itself.
Oversaturation of the box office market has a lot to do with why the audience for boxing in America has shrunk in the last 10 years. In the last 10 years, as a boxing fan, I've seen more pay-per-views out there than when Floyd Mayweather was active, than when Floyd Mayweather was fighting, and people actually bought pay-per-views back then. But now,
not only are the pay-per-views more expensive than they used to be on average, but there's more of them.
Self-destructive and not conducive towards the growth of boxing as a sport and bringing it back to the mainstream. Frank, most of all, should be able to look across the pond and see what's happened in America, what used to be the hub for World Boxing and tell himself, we don't need more pay-per-views, we need less of them.
Don't get testy about it. Don't get defensive like Stephen Mulhausen.
It's not going to help anything. It certainly isn't going to make people buy the pay-per-view. Now, least of all, that piracy is at an all-time high, and it's very easy for the audience to just steal the goddamn thing.
They do. With their Fire Sticks and their VPNs.
The only real way to combat piracy at this point is to just make the fights more accessible. That way, a larger audience tunes in. Large enough that maybe down the line boxing returns to the mainstream, because for years now, it's been a niche sport, hidden behind paywall after paywall. The subscription fee itself is already one paywall. You make it a pay-per-view, that makes two.
Sport can't survive like this.
My old college roommate, Tom, at UK Fight Night said there's a Hearn interview somewhere around AJ versus Ruiz 2 where he says that the 24-pound price tag is for one of the biggest fights of all time and a once-in-a-lifetime event. Fast forward a few years, and it's the price of the average pay-per-view. There's not even a title on the line in Wardley versus Parker, which is what he's talking about. Friend of the channel, Book Sale Pats, said, and who was actually asking for this fight? Absolutely nobody was. If it was an ordered fight or something, then maybe I'll let you off. But it wasn't, to which Tom responded, exactly, we just keep getting told that we should be grateful that they decided to fight each other, to which Stuart Clayton responded, if we ever see Joshua versus Fury, it'll likely be double.
He's not wrong. And this is what the guys who are paying 24 pounds are saying. We here in America were actually charged more for the same fight.
Simply doesn't make sense. If you want to test out the market in Britain, go ahead, because it involves a British fighter. But there were no Americans on that show, so why would you charge them more than anyone to see the same card? We should have got that as part of our subscription.
DAZN and Frank Warren want to turn their backs on the market and ignore them.
Market's going to turn its back on you. And the audience, they're going to watch your fight. Oh, they're still going to watch your fight, but they're going to steal it. It's not an ultimatum. It's not a threat. It's a reality. A lot of people saw Wardley versus Parker, but a lot of people didn't pay for it.
Want to keep that trend up?
Something has to change in the coming calendar year. We can't do with more of this. It's not sustainable, and it never was. The box office market was never intended to be the go-to for every highfalutin fighter that thinks they deserve this or they deserve that. It was reserved for the biggest of the big fights, and if it ain't that big, it don't belong on pay-per-view.
Simple as.
Now over to a fight that might actually be box office worthy when the time comes. Fabio Wardley's call-out of Alexander Usyk is now more realistic after his career-best win over Joseph Parker. Dubious stoppage and all, the fight looks like more of a reality. Once upon a time, it seemed inconceivable that Fabio Wardley, a former white-collar campaigner, would be anywhere near the conversation to face heavyweight king Alexander Usyk, and yet, at every turn, Wardley continues to take the critics' objections and forcibly tear them up in dramatic fashion. The 10th round sliding doors knockout of Justice Hooney at Portman Road kept the Fabio freight train on course. Step forward Joseph Parker, ticking along while he waited for his own Usyk blessing, expected by many to sweep aside the Ipswich man. Despite referee Howard Foster's untimely intervention in London, Wardley has earned his stripes. Suddenly, an Usyk request doesn't seem as far-fetched for the man newly crowned WBO mandatory challenger.
Perhaps it's because it's not simply a request anymore or a call-out. Now it's an order. Despite the dubious nature of that stoppage that most deem premature, anyone from Tony Bellew to Anthony Fowler to a large section of the boxing community at large, you have to give Fabio Wardley credit for coming this far. No one expected him to.
Even with the widespread outrage over yet another Howard Foster-esque stoppage, you have to give Fabio his flowers. Speaking to DAZN's In the Ring interviewer, Ade Oladipo, after stopping Parker in round 11, Wardley hollered, "Look, Ade, I've got one thing only to say. Usyk! Usyk!" "And you'll get Alexander Usyk as well," responded Oladipo. As a matter of fact, although, let's not count those chickens just yet, while Usyk's smaller frame and legendary movement caused no end of issues for all comers, it was apparent that Joseph Parker
came in too heavy against Wardley and paid the price by becoming a more static target in the end. Parker didn't get his overdue shot at Usyk simply because he wasn't exciting or marketable enough, at least according to the author of this article. Wardley brings both of those things to the table. His unorthodox style and unique brand of boxing have pulled him towards a higher ceiling. The official story is that Alexander Usyk had a nagging injury right after his big win over Daniel Dubois, and thus he sat out the rest of this calendar year after that fight. To suggest that Parker didn't get the fight because he's no fun is not an accurate depiction of what happened. Now, maybe that's why Turkey wasn't going to pay for it. To my knowledge, Turkey wasn't going to foot the bill for Usyk versus Parker, but he might for Usyk versus Wardley. But Joseph not getting the fight in a timely fashion wasn't due to Joseph being no fun. Irrespective of what Turkey would and wouldn't pay for, the WBO was going to order that thing. Had Joseph won on Saturday, Usyk would have had to fight him or give him the belt.
Now that entitlement has gone to Fabio Wardley, a shot at undisputed glory, or even a big payday versus Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois, or a returning Tyson Fury. The Parker rematch is also drifting in the background now, given the contentious finish, while Usyk would likely tame Fabio with comparative ease. Given the Ukrainian's vast skill set, the chance to earn a huge, life-changing payday is a lot more realistic after the events at the O2. You don't expect this much from a guy who was fighting in the white-collar circuit. At the most, you might expect that a Fabio Wardley or a fighter like him might have to make his money domestically.
And the buck stops there. At the most, he can be a high-profile gatekeeper like a Dave Allen.
That is the expectation, but Fabio Wardley, in his fashion, is in the business of exceeding expectations, and the heavyweight division is that much more exciting for it. So that every time Alexander Usyk gets out there now, given who he's fought and his age, that he's not getting any younger, it reads like a countdown to his inevitable defeat, since he insists on fighting on for what he said is another 5 fights against younger, fresher fighters like a Fabio Wardley, who aren't as skilled as he is.
Well-schooled, experienced, but they are fresher and they are younger, and that matters on a long enough timeline.
Kinda harkens back to Floyd Mayweather's pursuit of a 49-0 record when he looked to match Rocky Marciano's 49-0 record. It was a countdown for a lot of people.
That countdown was a part of the appeal. Who would be the one to topple Floyd Mayweather in his pursuit to match Rocky Marciano's 49-0? With Usyk, there's a similar element to where, so long as he remains in the sport at this age, it's a countdown to who's going to be the one to do it. Who's going to be the one to get him? That is the appeal now!
Is it going to be Fabio?
Asking that question openly, you can expect a lot of cookie-cutter answers. You know what people are going to say and who they're going to favor. Of course they're going to favor Usyk. The odds makers will. So will many of the fans. But to Fabio's credit, he brings something to the table that Joseph Parker didn't. He brings spontaneity. He brings the fear of the unknown. By all rights, he shouldn't have gotten this far, Fabio, but he has.
The power of belief!
And that cannon right hand, that equalizer, that seemingly can turn the tide in most any fight that he's having, because it already has in every fight that he's had.
We'll see what happens in the coming calendar year.